Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Spearheads from Space, written by Robert Holmes and directed by Derek Martinus. This story kicks off what we would like to call the golden age of Doctor Who. If the 60s was the silver age, shall we say, this is the start of the golden age, with many people, fans, starting their era with John Pertwee as the Doctor. And this particular story as well is considered to be a lot of people's first. And fun fact, Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall used this story as a blueprint to start off their respected versions of the show as their showrunner. So it has a pretty high reputation. It's also the first Doctor Who story in colour, and it is one of only 2 times in the show's history where, in behind the scenes, it was shot completely on film. Because back in the old days, what they used to do is shoot film sometimes and videotape. And this story was one of 2 examples of it being completely in film. Why does that matter? Because it means that this story is one of the first classic Who stories to be released on Blu-ray, which I don't have. Maybe I should pick that up with the TV movie, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Spearheads from Space. And it kicks off a whole new era. It's got a new Doctor, a new companion, and a new formula. As in the last story, the War Games, the Doctor has been exiled to Earth, and for the remainder of the series, for a good while, the Doctor is trapped in 1970s Earth, where he has to work with the military group known as UNIT, and that's a lot to take in as a newcomer. So what the show did, what the producer and writers did, is that they brought back a favourite character of the second Doctor era with Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, and he becomes a main character of the Doctor Who series. I don't think he counts as a companion. I personally consider him a companion. I mean, he's been in the show for more stories than a few of the companions there are, so I think I would consider him a companion, but that's just me. So the story itself, 4 episodes long. Also, we get a new intro as well, which is just iconic. It was the basis for the 2018 intro, so that's a cool fact. So there. The story is really strange. It feels like it's the start of what we would call like the James Bond era. A lot of John Pertwee stories feel like James Bond's plots, and there's always like an organization, an evil organization with henchmen and stuff like that. So in that way, it doesn't particularly feel too strange, but it also has a lot of comedy elements that remind me a bit of, I don't want to say Benny Hill or Carry On, but like some of the moments of that remind me of those, especially in a scene where the Doctor's on a wheelchair and he escapes from his captives, and it's pretty silly and it's just strange. But these are just small elements compared to the bigger story. Now, what happens? Well, you get introduced to Liz Shaw, a new companion, and she's like a scientific. I think she's an astrophysicist, I can remember. She basically deals with, she's a scientist basically, and Brigadier basically hires her to be part of UNIT. And I really like the more serious aspect of this character. Previous companions have always felt, don't get me wrong, I love the previous companions, Jamie, Susan, Ian and Barbara, but it was always something that gravitated more towards the kids, especially in some of their dialogue. But here it feels like this story was targeted at a much more older demographic. And it's nice to see her being a bit pessimistic about the whole idea of aliens, and she's kind of having a laugh with it. But she's much smarter than most of the people in the room, until the Doctor arrives, of course. In a way, she reminds me of Zoe, if Zoe came from the modern times. And it helps as well to bring out this atmosphere of spy and espionage, with her working with the Brigadier. And I really like the chemistry of these two actors. And they discover that there are these asteroids that have been coming to Earth, and they've come in patterns, and they've been coming, and there's two groups of asteroids that have hit the same place, and the chance of that is astronomically low. So the unit have come to investigate. Whilst this is happening, we get a few plots in this story, which is very strange, because usually what in Doctor Who, previous to this story, what they do is they split the stories between the Doctor and companions, but obviously this has been our introduction to the Doctor and the companions, so we couldn't really do that here. So what we do have is some minor characters that just appear in this story and have their own little plots. And one of them is this guy who's designed a special doll, but this company that he was working for has basically kicked him out without him even being acknowledged. And you can clearly see there's something going on. And this aspect really reminds me of James Bond, especially the setting where it's like these like dark tunnels and tubes and stuff, and there's steam and everywhere, and some of the music in certain of these areas as well. You got the pretty blonde assistants, and the girls don't get like any big plot, but the fact that they're them makes me think James Bond. And we get this whole mystery of this guy who's who basically kicked this guy out, and he seems to be mind controlled. He has like a pain and stuff, and he doesn't give like direct answers to questions. And you're very intrigued into this story. It always brings out little elements to keep you interested. And whilst this is happening, back at the site where all the asteroids hit on the Earth, there's this guy who we learn a bit throughout the story that he used to be a smuggler, or he used to start stealing stuff, and he found these comets, and he tries to take them and as like an ornament and stuff, and he doesn't trust UNIT until they find out that they might be worth something. So he tries to like talk to them so he can get some information, and if he can sell them, basically he get money for them as a reward. And there's also as well, he's kind of an abusive man, and the way he talks to his wife is really disgusting. But it helps for this character that makes him grounded. It makes him feel like a real person. Not that, it's right or anything, but it helps make you feel like, right, this is a real person. This is not made for kids. This is made for real people, and this is for real people. Sorry, I'm all over the place. It is really hot, so whilst I'm filming this, so if I make absolutely no sense, I do apologise. But anyway, so this character, he and it also helps that he gets killed as well. Spoiler alert. So basically what's been happening is, I wouldn't say it's a spoiler, but it comes in a box set with advertised as being all Autons and stuff. So the villains of this story are the Autons, which strangely have appeared in 3 TV Doctor Who stories, all of them featuring a new Time Lord, whether regeneration or a completely new character, a new companion, and kicks off a new season of Doctor Who. So they're basically used as So basically Autons are used as B minor villains. They're not supposed to be like the most iconic villains. They just sort of appear whenever we need to get introduced to stuff. Like, if that makes any sense, they're more like a background threat for our main story to kick off, which really helps in this story as we get introduced to the Doctor, now played by the fantastic John Pertwee, which is one of the earlier moments that I got into the series. I mean, obviously I wasn't watching these back in the 70s, but when I was growing up with classic Doctor Who, we had one second Doctor story, the two Messiah Men, and then we had a bunch of third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So this is what I consider like my era, my expertise of Doctor Who with John Pertwee, and he's a fantastic actor. John Pertwee's usually known for his comedic roles. I can't remember what it's called, but there's one where he's like a scarecrow. A lot of people are going to kill me for not getting a name, but I do apologise. And he's also appeared in a few of the Carry On films. And he was actually one of the first Doctor Who actors who were big before they were on Doctor Who. And so it's very strange to see him here playing the role a lot more seriously than his other roles. Though here, he does actually have a little goofy moments. There's a great bit where he tricks Liz Shaw into giving him the TARDIS key because they don't believe that he's the Doctor, because Brigadier doesn't recognise the face, isn't it? And so he tries to get into the TARDIS and fly off, but because the Time Lords have done something to the dematerialization circuits, try to say that 12 times fast, it kind of like puffs in a smoke, and then the Doctor comes out of the TARDIS and all silly and stuff. And there's also some great humour where he's talking about his eyebrows and how he can communicate with certain aliens who talk with their eyebrows, like that sort of. So he does have some really great funny moments. A lot of people consider his Doctor the more serious of the Doctors, which, yeah, fair enough. There are more comedic Doctors, but to say that he has no comedic charm to him is just plain wrong. He has some great witty banter, especially with how much he kind of disses the Brigadier. But in this one, he kind of is equal ground to him. And that's an important thing with this story. I especially love this first season, because a lot of times in Doctor Who, it seems like you have the Doctor as like the big important character that like literally it's either him or no one else, and then you've got like all your minor characters. But here you feel like the Brigadier, Liz Shaw, and the Doctor are on the same level. Like you can feel like, in terms of how they respect each other and stuff, Liz Shaw doesn't feel like a companion in that sense. She kind of feels like the Doctor's sort of ally instead of companion. She doesn't look up to the Doctor, and the Doctor doesn't look up to her. It's kind of like they're co-workers in a sense. Actually, that's a great way of putting it. The Doctor and Liz Shaw are co-workers, as they're both scientists now for UNIT. And yeah, so I really love this aspect of the story. They feel a lot more real and grounded compared to past Doctor Who stories. And, it just really works fantastically well. And I really like the scene where he steals clothes in the hospital. Wow, that sounds really bad. It makes sense in context. And it's strange as well, because there's a shower scene, and when you see John Pertwee have a tattoo, and so I don't know if there's a story where the second or first Doctor has a tattoo that can continue throughout his regenerations. I don't know. I should really look into that. But anyway, back to the actual plot. So the Autons, the Nestine consciousness, what they're doing is they're taking people of higher authority and turning them into plastics, especially with unit and stuff. And what they're trying to do is collect all these comets, which will make like a sort of brain for the Nestine, and so they can control all these robot plastic people and take over the world and colonize. It's very strange as well in terms of Auton stories, because in future Auton stories they specifically mention that it's the plastic that they can control. They can control any form of plastic. But it's never really stated here. The plastic just seems to be more of like a cover-up. The Autons seem more like they're robots disguised as shop window dummies. And there's also a great moment where they go to Madame Two Swords. Yes, they actually filmed it in Madame Two Swords, and they take some of the plastic figures that they have been created for Madame Two Swords. But it was their creation. It's them as sort of robots. So it's strange because you only think Autons are plastic, but it's never really established that that's how it works in this story. So there you go, just a fun fact for all you fans out there. But the Nestine consciousness and the Autons, they're not that they're not badly done. I mean, they are fantastic, especially some of the shots with the leader of the character and this guy he's been mind controlling. Derek Martinus decides that for when we have shots of our villains, the camera will zoom up extremely on their faces, and the villains are always like close up to each other. Everything's sort of squished together with all the villains are like this, and then you like have like another villain also close up to the camera like that, and it makes you feel a bit more intense. But I think it might have been done a bit too much. But I did start to kind of notice it, and it kind of took me out of the story a bit. The actual Autons, like automated soldiers themselves, are really cool. How they're like these silent killers with these guns that like shoot, and when they shoot something, there's this like puff of orange smoke that makes you really feel like, right, that's how close they can shoot. So you can see from the audience's point of view how their shot is to the closest to their target. So it makes you really intense, and they're also silent as well. They don't have any dialogue, and there's some great scenes, especially when there's a great bit where the unit is firing at them, and they're just taking. There's nothing stopping them. And in part 4, I think it's part 4, they basically activate all the Autons that they've been making in shop windows. So all the shop windows dummies kind of come out and start attacking people all over the streets. And it's just a slaughterhouse. And there's bits where there's just people waiting out on a bus, just enjoying their life, and just an Auton starts shooting them, and you get this cool orange smoke smuggling everywhere as they shoot people in the back, and you can see it all like popping out in their back. Very, very cool. So I really do like the Autons, but I don't think, in terms of them in the plot, I don't know if they really work. Like I said, with some of the shots that they have, with the extreme close-ups on their faces, it does kind of make it a bit cheesy, is a nice way of putting it. And for most of the story, the Autons are just retrieving these orbs, and not very well, I like to add. So you get that, and I think in terms of plot, just purely out of plot, I don't think it really works particularly well. But something about it in terms of pacing, or if it's just the actors' performances, it really nails it and it really works really well. But probably makes no sense at all. But there you go. And the final battle where the unit and the Doctor and Liz Shaw, they go to this plastic factory to try and take down the Nestine, and you get basically just a full-on war as the Doctor tries to take down this squid thing, the Nestine consciousness. And it's some really cool shots here, and some very iconic moments. I think maybe the villain got taken down a bit too well, but you know, it still works in the story. So that's Spearheads from Space. I do apologise if this is all over the place. It is incredibly hot in here. Whew. But just to let you all know, this is a great place to start. If you want to get into 70s Doctor Who, highly recommend Spearheads from Space. It comes in a box set with another third Doctor story, which we will get onto, The Terror of the Autons. But this story in particular is a very great start. Like I said, it was a blueprint for all the starting points of the new series with Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall using it. So it is really highly guarded. I don't know if I would put it in my top 10 favourite stories, but it is a very great story, and if it's your favourite, I can completely see why. So that's Spearheads from Space. So join me next time where, you know, I actually can't remember what the next story is. I believe it's the Silurians. I could be wrong. So join me next time on whenever is going to be the next. I do apologise. I've said this 100 times. I do apologise if this is all over the place. So join me next time for the next Doctor Who story starring John Pertwee. So I'll see you all next time on the Doctor Who Marathon.